Here, I'll give you a rip. Are you ready?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Uh-oh, that was a big one. Oh, shit.
Oh, this is so gonna be the intro now. Something like that. Well, oh, it's too good. It's too good.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was bigger than I meant. Oh, well.
Hi everyone, I'm Vee. Today on the podcast, we have one of CT's lovable artists, the one and only Etheria-chan. We touch on his history in finance and game development, his entry into the NFT space, thoughts on the future of NFTs, and advice for artists wanting to get involved. I had a really fun time with it. I really enjoyed Etheria's perspective and insight, and he had some really intriguing points regarding things like on-chain gaming and social capital. Apologies in advance for the audio. We had a couple technical issues. Kitsune and I have been trying new audio equipment, so we're still kind of sorting that out. As always, if you like the show, please give us a comment and rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And now, without further ado, Etheria-chan.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other kind of thing about this is it, as you can clearly tell, like we are still dialing in the level of preparation. But now from now on, I feel like if we have more heads up, we can think of and get some like more concrete questions. But yeah, I mean, it's more free jazz than anything else. That sounds
Very
so
sporadic,
fucking old.
chaotic. Oh yeah, you know.
I honestly wouldn't want it any other way. Like, I would feel, I personally, if you came and you said, hey, we've got this list of questions, I would be like, oh shit.
Yeah,
Structured interview.
Yeah.
We're actually pivoting to becoming a Zach podcast where this is like the honeypot that we used to be.
Oh shit.
And then like we ambush people with.
Oh, so fucking great.
So interesting. Did you happen to make any on-chain transfers to a certain wallet on such and such day? So interesting. Could you say your full legal name and social security number into the microphone for me really quick?
This is not actively being transmitted to a federal agency. No, not at all.
No one here is a Fed. Although, to be honest, this feels like sometimes it's a Fed cast. Like some of the people seem just crazy enough to be a Fed, and I feel like we have guests on. Like Lawrence, I feel like worked for the State Department. He's like, I just happened to be there at the start of cryptocurrency, and I just it's like I was all over the world, and it's like all these things. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
who was paying?
Yeah.
Who is paying you, Lawrence? I guess where we begin, and I feel like I always say the sentence in the same way. I goes, yeah, I guess where we start, but I think it is my favorite way of jumping off is like, how did you get started in this space? Like, what was your journey to crypto?
Give us the origin story.
All right. So, wow, you're gonna have to edit this one up a bit. Okay, so, wow, this is hard. Which part of my history do I start at?
And it's exactly as much as you want to be comfortable with. No need to like dox or do a weird, because as far as this space is concerned, right? If you've been in crypto for 4 months, you're basically an expert. You know more than Kobe. You're an OG. So...
Yeah.
Okay. So I will actually start at the beginning, just because I think it makes a little more sense for a lot of the people who follow me these days for being an artist. I'll start back at being an artist. So I originally actually wanted to be an artist, an animator, and so I had some, I guess, some small renown when I was young in that area. and was planning to study art and animation in college. And I'm just old enough that um, the previous recession hit while I was in college. Um, and I don't come from money. My family doesn't come from money, so I had to make the decision. Like my parents were totally willing to support me, and I love them for that. But I had to be like honest with myself. Like this isn't good for me. This isn't good for them. What am I doing? You taking their money and going to art school. I'm going to get out of school. There are going to be no jobs anyway, and I'm trying to be an artist. Like this is scary. And so I pivoted in college to get a business degree. I actually have a degree in finance. Spent a few years doing that out of college, and then slowly determined that I hated that. I hated finance. I really did, and I I love programming. I love specifically game development. And I had been doing that on the side. Around that time, there were some really big kind of Cinderella stories in the indie game dev space, Super Meat Boy being one of them.
Sure.
And so those guys were kind of like my idol. And I found a way to kind of take art and do it in a way that allowed me to also do development. So I pivoted it to doing that. I started a small business. I'm not going to go into all that stuff, to the doxing portion of it, but I did manage to kind of work my way out of finance and into being a full-time developer, and I did that for about 10 years. Um, so here we are last year, at the beginning of last year. You know what? I skipped a small portion there, which is that in 2018, that's when I joined the crypto space. I actually did uh, work with a startup at that time that was in the crypto space, being a developer, and so that was kind of like my intro to crypto. I also around that time, when Bitcoin hit 20K and things were going wild and everybody was euphoric, obviously my that caught my eye, right? Um, but I was not in the market at that time. Thank God I didn't get wrecked during that initial fallout in 2018. Instead, I actually bought in during the bear market. Um, I did lose fuck tons of money right off the bat because it's impossible to time the bottom, right? I think I bought in around somewhere around 10K Bitcoin. Um, but being the noob that I was, and having that unit bias that everyone does, I bought into some shit coins. Some went to zero. Blah blah. We don't need to go through all that. But um, so I had been in the space since then. Um, and I kind of had forgotten about it because as bear markets go, and we'll see how this one plays out. But as that bear market went, uh, there was that kind of slow trickle to what felt like zero, what felt like, this is never coming back kind of a thing. And so my money was still in the market. I just kind of forgot about it and moved on with my life and went back to work. Um, so I spent another few years working for a software company locally, and um, I was a lead software developer. I was doing some cybersecurity for them, and I was getting really burnt out. When you join the crypto space, one of the things you're kind of hoping for is that you'll be able to, self support yourself financially and do the things that you love to do. But uh, since I joined during the bear market and there weren't tons of opportunities for somebody who wasn't, deeply embedded, um, I um, I don't know. I don't want to say I gave up on that dream, but I just assumed, okay, well, I'll go back to work and work. So, um, during that next bull run in 2020, um, numbers started to go back up. My portfolio value started to go back up, and it got to the point where I was like, you know what, I could kind of do this. Like at the time, I thought I was going to be a trader, but I didn't know shit about trading. It was a terrible idea. Um, what was fun was I created an anonymous account, um, which I didn't have before. Like I had worked in crypto before, but I had never like really participated in crypto Twitter. I just kind of lurked. I had some people that I followed because, um, I knew who they were through having worked in the industry before. Um, but I finally decided to participate. I wanted to meme, I wanted to shitpost, and I was way too afraid to do that with my name on the account. Um, partially because I have family and friends that follow me. Like I don't want, I don't know. There's just some things I don't really want to say publicly, with under my name at least. So I created that account, and uh, but one of the first things that I kind of noticed. Um, well, let me back up just a tiny bit. I guess you can edit that little this little fuck up out.
Yeah, you're good.
Um, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted my account to be. I felt like most of the people that I followed had a persona, right? They had something that they were
Sure.
embodying. And maybe like to a degree that is them, right? But to a degree there's a character that we all kind of associate with that person. Some obvious famous examples are like Foo, right? Has it
Right.
has a clear persona, right? Um, and I kind of wanted that. And I also, being a big fan of like the concept of the metaverse, the concept of us kind of being able to exist in this alternate reality, was thinking of whoever this character was going to be as my avatar in the metaverse,
Your
right?
digital
Yeah.
presence of sorts, yeah.
Yeah, this is my digital identity, and I can pick it. I can be whatever I want to be, right? And having mentioned a bit before that I was kind of worried about like my friends finding me. I had been in the crypto space before. I didn't realize quite how big crypto Twitter was at the time, but I was worried, maybe these people would find me, or maybe it would be obvious who I was or whatever, depending on the types of things that I say. And so I wanted to be a character that was as as not me as possible.
A complete inverse of
Yeah.
yeah,
And so
total opposite.
and the idea popped into my head of, I remembered several years ago there being these these like Japanese mascots for different um, brands. Like I remember there was a Japanese mascot for Unity, the game editor, um, and I was like, I want to be the like an anime mascot for Ethereum. I thought that sounded really fun. And so the idea of Etheria-chan like popped immediately into my head. This was like seriously over the course of like 12 hours. I didn't put a ton of thought into it. It just kind of popped into my head, and I made that original profile picture. Just kind of, I grabbed Creative Commons anime character, and I did some photo editing, very minimal art at the time, um, to create my persona, and it just felt right, and it clicked, and I made my account, and it felt right. And what I found slowly over the course of those first few months of creating that account was that like I felt more like myself. Um, I felt more like myself when I was posting as Etheria than I did walking around in day-to-day life. Um, and anyways, so I kind of got absorbed, like deeply absorbed in crypto
Hmm.
Twitter, and like that became kind of the majority of my free time. And I started kind of doodling, I guess you could say, at first. It wasn't super serious at first. It was just kind of I made some versions of my character that were based off of other people's characters. So like I made one that was me with Miyuki's hat on, and then I made one that was me with um, Tubi's face wrap from Nier Automata, and somebody saw that, and I wasn't super deeply in NFTs at the time. Actually, I don't think I had bought a single NFT at the time. Somebody reached out to me First of all, they tried to convince me to buy Pudgy Penguins, and I didn't know what the fuck NFTs were, so I so I was like, no, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything bad about Pudgy Penguins here. I just didn't know anything, and so I was like, no, I'm not gonna buy that. And then they reached back out a few days later, and they were like, hey, we want to make a Pudgy Penguin for Byzantine General. Uh, would you be interested? And they just kind of guessed that I would do it because I had been kind of doing that with my profile picture.
Yeah, you'd been making almost like pseudo honoraries this whole time.
Yeah, as a side thing.
Yeah, just like goofing off though. They weren't good at first, right? Like the ones that I made of myself were like super questionably bad at first. But like um but yeah, so I just made that Byzantine General Penguin, and then I had a couple people see that and reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I want my own penguin," and so I made one for CL, and I made one for Jaws, um, the guy that works for Ohm, um, and some more people reached out, and then I was like, wow, this is kind of a thing. This felt it felt good, and so I started reaching out to people. I started reaching out to some influencers that I knew, and I was just like, hey, here are these penguins that I'm making, do you want one? And they said yes, surprisingly. And some of them were paying me, and it just became this thing I was not expecting it to become. And I started, like, at first it was just kind of for fun. It was just like a like me sketching as a hobby. I didn't take it super super seriously at first, and it quickly became, wow, there's like an opportunity here to actually like make this my career. And I'm burnt out as a developer, and I'm burnt out in cybersecurity, and I really want to do something else. Um, and it didn't take too long before I just decided, and I was still married at the time. My wife and I were like, hey, I've made enough money here that like I could actually maybe do this. Um, so I became a full-time crypto artist. And we came full circle, and now the things that I wanted to do when I was younger, like I can do again. Um, so I know that was a bit long-winded, but
No, I
uh,
mean, well, I was gonna say like I relate really deeply to that story because, and I think it's established like V and I are on the boomer end of the spectrum, but I had like a very similar thing where like I went to art school during the same period of time, and it dropped out, and I guess many years later ended up going into a finance degree, which I don't really was not my bliss, and then winding up in crypto full time. And there's something about that changeover that I always wonder. I feel like a lot of people um you know put down the paintbrush or put down the pen at a certain point and then come back to it. And I just wonder about like that transition, like how you felt at the time, having like being like consciously and cognizantly being like, I am giving up this artistic practice, artistic study, and I'm going into like this, you know, let's call it what it is, like quote unquote viable career path. Like, what was that? How I mean, how difficult was that?
um, that was really hard. It was really hard, and I actually like. Oh man, yeah, I've got to be careful what I say because I don't want to dox things. But like, I switched schools. I switched back to the original school that I was going to for art, and I started studying art again. And like,
Oh wow.
yeah, like, yeah, it wasn't like a clean break at first because I loved it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I I have friends who are like animators for big studios and stuff, and I would see their work prior to them working at the studios, like their university work, and I would just be like blown away at what they were able to do and how they were able to move me emotionally, and like um I didn't want to give that up.
Yeah.
But there became like this, like it kind of felt very much like a movie where like you kind of have to, okay, you're an adult now, it's time to move on, type of a thing. And um yeah, I was not pumped about that.
Reality hits, and it's like, okay, now we have to.
Yeah, yeah, you know what's really funny, I remember I was when I was working in finance, I'm so glad, holy crap, by the way, Kitsune, like I didn't know that about you. We have a very similar background.
Yeah.
Um, but it was funny sitting at my shitty cubicle at some finance company. Like I would get so bored. Like I would, finance. You know, it's I don't know exactly what it feels like to work at like a crypto company in finance. Maybe it's much more exciting. So I definitely don't want to like I don't want anybody to hear this description that I'm about to say of
Be like,
finance
hey,
and
fuck you! How dare you?
right,
I just be
right.
How
completely
dare
turned off by,
you?
oh god, if TradFi is so it sounds this bad, DeFi must be so
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sure. Yeah, it seems like a really boring thing to be in, particularly right now.
Yeah.
Right. So that is a disclaimer. You know, I'm not trying to shit on all of finance, but I personally, as a creative, this it was a very bad place for me. Um, you know, you do the same thing month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year, the same reports, the same, you know, and you start to automate it. Like I was getting to do some programming in those jobs because I was trying to make my job easier because I
Sure.
had to do the same shit over and over. But like um, because I was good at automating, I would end up with this kind of downtime where I still had to be sitting in the seat, um, but there weren't any reports due for a couple weeks, you know, and I still had some work to do. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't just sitting around twiddling my thumbs all the time, but I had enough downtime that like would start to sketch, and I would start
Yeah.
to. I had these. I had um, these post-it note flip books that I had animated. And I remember
Wow.
one time I went to a friend's house and he like I showed it to him because I was kind of proud of it. It was fun, you know. And he was like, "You did that at work?" Like
It's
I don't
like
know.
you're almost describing like someone being caught, like being in prison, and you're like having to find something to like kill the time and make joy. And
Yes,
so like you're sketching on like whatever piece of paper you can find. You're animating
exactly.
in the oldest style possible. You're like making zoetropes and shit at your desk in secret to try and like scratch the itch.
Just
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and I would like I wasn't super big into Instagram, but I had this little mannequin. You know those little drawing mannequins?
Oh yeah,
They're like on a little metal pike
the
sitting on.
posable guys.
Yeah, I had one on my desk that I took
The
with me
things
to
I
work.
would get so excited to see as a child when my parents would go collect art supplies for their practice, and I'd be like, "That's the closest thing to a toy in here. Like this is the only
Yes,
redeeming
yes.
quality."
And they weren't even that cool.
And not even that cool. They can't even do much. They don't even have fingers.
Right. Yeah, their poses are very unrealistic, but I would pose them in these really silly scenarios. And I would take pictures of them and put them on Instagram. Like that was one of the things that kept me going.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
so, anyways, all of this is to say that TradFi wasn't for me, and I think it's kind of no surprise that I ended up thinking, well, I could be a developer,
Sure.
and I could maybe be a game developer. That still sounds, you know, creative and interesting. Um, so I think it's not too surprising that I didn't stay in that field.
Can I ask, do you think it's like that's like a symptom kind of the TradFi world that they didn't expect? I mean, by which I mean, you know, there is that certain period, kind of like V said, of like, okay, I'm an adult, I'm going to do this job, and it's what ends up dominating and taking over your life. But then you reach a point to it, right? Like you with your automation, or people with like, you know, ending up getting promoted out of like the trenches, like whatever. There's a myriad of reasons, but you end up winding up with this free time at work. And I'm sure historically, right, in like the 50s, you were like, I have free time. There's nothing else in the world for me. I'm just going to zone out, or I'm going to get really drunk. But now it's like you have the internet. You can go and look at what other people are doing. You have the ability to like create things, or you can go and look at this crypto thing. And do you think that is like one of the I guess like drains on the traditional financial, let alone traditional corporate world that we're seeing, is like there is enough room now for people to look out the window and see grass and be like, I would rather do that than this every
Yeah,
single time.
Creative
yeah,
freedom in a
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
I'm really um, I don't want to get into my opinions on what's going to happen with the market because I'm not a trader of any
Oh,
kind, and
don't worry, that's
I will
not
sound I'll
That's
sound like an idiot, but I will say though that I think yeah, the answer is yes. I think at least, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next few years because that thought process isn't sustainable,
right.
right? There are jobs that must be done. There's work that must be done, and um, but yes, I absolutely do think that. I was sitting around with some friends the other day, um, and it was interesting to hear. They're in such a different industry from me, like completely different industry from me, but they're like they were describing everything that we just talked about.
Hmm.
They were saying like, I want to be doing this other thing. I want more free time. Why am I sitting at this desk all day? That kind of thing, right? Yeah, I think that that's a generational movement. Um,
Yeah,
For
yeah.
for sure, for sure. Um, I wanted to ask briefly about because I'm looking at your collection of works on OpenSea and going through your NFTs and your art style and stuff, and you talked about you basically got to the point where you were like, no, I could make a living out of this, like actually doing this and actively making art and participating and engaging with people in this way.
mhm.
Um, so bear market, crypto market aside, I'm kind of curious as you've been on Twitter, been involved in spaces, like if you want to, if you'd be willing to perhaps give your take on the NFT market in the sense of do you think you could have repeated the arguably level of success that you've had now given everything that's happened over time or like where you think NFTs are headed um or
Oh,
or or
gotcha.
even advice that you perhaps for anyone else who wants to enter the NFT space what you would suggest or
I
recommend.
definitely I definitely think like I don't think that the opportunity has necessarily dried up. I think that money still exists in the market. I think that individuals still are interested in art. I still get requests for commissions and things. Like I know that there are customers out there. So I would say if you're an artist and you're interested, I would at least give it a shot before I said, oh, the bear market the bear market's here, I give up. I would give it a shot. Um, I do think that there were some there was kind of like a perfect storm that I was in that caused as much success as I had. And I like I just want to address it, if only to recognize for myself that like um, I'm not some special amazing thing. And I don't mean to say that like as an artist or as someone who sells your things like you should never sell yourself short, that kind of thing, right? But I think it's important to realize that there was at least something special happening there. Like I when I started drawing those things, it was the middle of a massive NFT bull run. There were tons of generative collections coming out that people were excited about. People still believed, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the NFTs are over or that the price will never go back up, that kind of thing, because I don't know. It's not for me to say. But like it's obvious that where we are now and where we were, shoot, when was that? Like August of last year, are two very different things. Um, so like basically, Penguins had just launched. People were getting really pumped about them. Um, they didn't have their own honoraries. That was huge for me because that meant that I could step in and do customs. Like that meant that there was massive demand for customs, right? Even from influencer level accounts, because they didn't do that. Um, and most projects that release these days tend to have honoraries, so it's less of a, I think maybe less of an opportunity for somebody to do customs like that. Um, yeah.
I mean, I think that there's an interesting point of differentiation right there, right? Like, you are a practicing artist who is making like, you know, one-offs or honoraries or individual pieces, right? That's so different from somebody compiling a folder of assets and having them run through and generate according to
Right.
rarity, right?
Another
Like
5,000 PFP.
crank
Yeah.
one out. It must be very right, because so many of those generative collections, right, were for speculation, hype. We're obviously riding trains of other projects, but I imagine as like a a more practicing bespoke artist, it's a very different experience than someone blasting out these generative collections.
Right. Yeah, very different. And I did do a generative collection. It was free to mint, the Uzis, but
Oh yeah,
uh, um, but but yes, very different, very different. And I've been tempted several times to do a collection, and I've had, big accounts that I respect reach out to me and suggest that I should do a collection, especially when, I, anybody who knows me probably knows that I went through a pretty rough divorce and I had some rough times, some rough financial times as well because of that. And, people were like, why don't you release a collection? Um, and I have all the skills to do it. I've generated collections for others before. But don't get me wrong. I don't want to like, I'm not trying to say that generative collections are bad or that, people shouldn't make them or something like that. But that just, I don't know. I think I would have to, like, before I would make another collection, it would have to be something that really excites me and makes me think that I'm doing something substantially different. That's
hmm
not, you know what I mean?
You don't just want to
Um,
pump out another generic or derivative or something like that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to do something derivative, but also, well, that's funny coming from me who made all my the majority of my art is derivative, but um,
in the yeah, I get what you mean.
Right. Yeah.
but I had some ideas. I had several ideas. Some people who have been holders of my art for a long time and have been in my private channels know that I've had a series of like I had a series of jellies that I was gonna make. There was a series of drink related art that I was thinking about making that I thought was kind of funny. There have been several times when, I and some friends have thought, hey, this would be a really funny collection to make. Let's do it. But one of the fears that I have, this is just something that I always keep in the back of my mind when I make my decisions. One of the fears that I have is just that because a secondary market will exist for anything I make, that someone can buy in and someone can lose money.
Sure,
And
sure.
that fear drives me to make certain decisions. And one of those has been to no matter how good of an idea I've had, I haven't released a collection because of that fear. Even though I'm not forcing anyone to buy, right? And they're making their own financial decisions. Um, it still is scary to me. I don't want to be responsible for that. Um, so yeah,
That
sorry.
almost makes more sense coming from like a not necessarily, but with a finance background as well.
Yeah,
Thinking about like and one, not coming off, you're not coming off like a snob, like, oh, making art for art's sake and I don't want it to be treated as some speculative asset. No, that's a, I mean, that's a perfectly, in my view, that's a perfectly valid position to hold.
yeah, yeah. I I love the other thing is that one of the things I love about doing the one of one art is that you're working with an individual who, like, they want something
hmm
specific, right? They're not coming to you to uh for lack of a better term, open up a loot box and see what's inside.
Sure.
Right.
Um, and they're not coming to you to speculate necessarily. I have had people suggest to me that they were speculating on my art, and every time that happens, I'm like, "Hey, stop! Like, first of all, I need you to know, like, please don't speculate on my art. like, like if you wanna commission from me, great. But like, it really scares me when people start suggesting that they're gonna make money on my art because I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, maybe they will, but I don't know. But yeah, you're working with an individual. You're usually not working with someone who's expecting to make a buck off of it. And so what comes out is I'm putting my effort into this thing to make it something that this person will love. And I can be relatively confident based on the order that they made that they will like it. And I have not had a single person that I've made a 1-1 for come back to me and tell me that they were not happy with it, or you know what I mean? Like, um, so whereas with a generative collection, there are inherently floor traits. There's a QA process that goes into uh, generative collections where you do have the ability to decide whether or not something goes into the collection. But if you're making a 10,000 PFP collection, the odds are there's going to be some art in there that maybe is less desirable, and somebody's going to get that. and,
Yeah.
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and somebody's going to buy that on the secondary market. And um yeah, so those are things that kind of deeply weigh on me when I'm making decisions.
I'd almost think too, just to add, because we touched briefly on this on the pod before the pod about the power of social capital, but not even just artists necessarily who have like an idea or a vision and want to work with you, but sometimes just artists who want to support you as an individual. They know
Yeah.
they can have the peace of mind in both knowing based on your based on like your previous works. Okay, I know what I'm going to get. I know like the type of what I'm going to get, and I like it, and I'm supporting someone I care about. If you're, if
Yeah.
you're friends, so
Yeah, I've been so blessed. So, like, I I hate that I'm not gonna say names because I'm gonna end up forgetting someone and then I'm gonna feel really bad. But like, there have been specific people who have like reached out for multiple pieces of art, or people who have come back. I have one person who just reached out yesterday, and they have two incredibly cute orders that like I'm trying to focus on dev at the moment, and so I'm not doing tons of art, but I'm like I need to find time to do these. These are awesome. Um and that means so much to me. You're absolutely right. Social capital, I definitely don't want to talk about it in any kind of exploitative way, but social capital is, I think, like one of the most valuable things in the world, not in this industry, in the world, right? Like what people think of you, and uh, how people feel about the work that you've done for them in the past, and that kind of thing. Like um, one of the most important things in the world. So
yeah, for sure.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Full stop.
No. I mean, sometimes it's just like we have to, some of it for me is just like trying to think of a follow up question and stuff like that.
I think I'm gonna take a quick hit. Are you guys ready? Get
Yeah,
get a
let
little.
her let it loud.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like that social capital thing is one of the most exploited things we see in nowadays, and certainly over the course of like the last year, we've watched people who really took advantage of social capital that they had built up. Um, not wanting to name names because I've done that a few times too many, and I get random fanboys in the DMs who get very upset. Um, but like I think we've seen people really burn their social capital for self-interest and for self-gain.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah.
it ever been worth it? I've never in the
It's
examples I've seen I was like this can't be worth
I
it.
don't know. Some of these people look like they're walking away with quite a bit of money. I guess
Right.
it is a question like what is the price you get on selling your soul and burning all of your bridges. And
Not worth it.
it's
Not worth it.
I imagine it's never. I mean, well, okay. I'm not gonna sit here in front. If it was like $100 million, I would burn every single bridge in my life. I
No.
like
Ugh.
V is like someone I like adore and love collaborating with. But if it was $100 million, V, you would never see me again, and my name would be a curse in every language. Like I think there is, jokes aside, like some level that people reach where
Every
they're
everyone
looking
has
at
a
a treasury,
point.
right? They're looking at some treasury balance, or they're looking at an NFT collection, and they're like, I can just rug right now, and I can always come back under an altar. I can always do, or unless you get seafood and track down, and Zach comes knocking on the door, but
And he will.
and he
Right.
will. Right? You can only outrun the Reaper for so long, but like it is. I think there's something does happen to people when they wind up in those situations where they are seeing like an an un reasonable amount of money in front of them, and they're like, fine, it doesn't matter to me.
You know what? I think so. I think that it's a little more than that.
Yeah.
Because that's like that. So don't take this the wrong way. I think there's a lot of ways that you can interpret what I'm about to say, and I'm not um I'm not suggesting that those people are good people, but I do think that the likelihood that they're just sitting there staring at the treasury number and thinking, "Oh, I could just take this," like haha, I'm gonna rub my fingers together, kind of like, no, I doubt that. What I bet it is though instead is that there's this culture of like acceptance of
Yeah.
rugs, and that's what I think. Like, I love Zach because I think what we have to do in this industry, in order for that to go away, it needs to be clear that that's not okay,
Right.
and that there is a downside to doing that. That you will get caught. That you very likely will get prosecuted, especially if you get doxxed. Um, I think that's the only way that that goes away. And it's one of the reasons why so many normal people that aren't in crypto, I hate to say normal that way, but
Yeah. I
but
mean,
that's why they're not here. They think that it's a scam, and it's like, so we need that to not be okay, right? To not be seen as okay.
and yeah, I mean, sure, that goes a long way towards like the ideas of like, I understand why, probably a lot of, let's say, normies like want there to be some more regulation or safety nets, right? The joke, everybody wants a decentralized financial system, until you want to be able to go get your money back from somebody.
Yeah.
And so like people like Zach, like that mechanism of self-enforcement and community enforcement, I think is super valuable for that exact reason. I don't want to pivot too much, but just something you kind of said it we were touching on a minute ago, and not to put you in the position of having to talk about like a giant macro thing that maybe is not as like, I don't want you to make some prediction, but like, do accepting that NFTs are not over and that there is a path forward, do you think we now move into an age where those generative projects kind of fall away and we do see more of like what you experience, not just like one of one commissions, but like true one of one collections of like handmade bespoke pieces that people do want to collect for reasons that they collect traditional art?
I think so, yes, and I think it's clear that that's I think it's clear that that's desirable, right? Like there are other artists besides me that are doing this that are incredibly successful. Graphy is incredibly good. His G Liner collection, people love those. I feel bad. I don't want to like say specific artists, so I'll stop there just to avoid like forgetting someone. But so yes, I definitely think so. You know, and that is like completely aside from the speculation portion of your question, right?
Yeah.
I think that the collection of those things is going to be highly desirable.
Yeah.
Um, and especially as people, this is just my experience, but as people tend to like make gains, um, then they want to give back to someone, right? Um, so one interaction that I had recently was that someone made some money doing some like arbitrage or something. I don't remember the exact details, but they made some money and they were like, I wasn't going to have this money anyway. I'll commission some art. And so I think that that's going to be a kind of trend. Maybe people who have, for lack of a better term, they've made it. But they have an income source either through trading or through being a dev or whatever, and they want to support an artist. I think that that's definitely going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I was gonna say, Kitsune, you and I throw back to the Miyuki episode when we talked about like the era where we could have patronage again, people who are just paying artists for,
Yeah,
or just paying a living to an artist. It's like
you have some weirdo who lives on your estate to like make
exactly.
you portraits, which is like, yeah, that's the dream.
That is the dream. And I wanted to touch back too, just briefly on the social capital thing, because I think in terms of one of ones or one commissions types of things being more valuable, social capital plays heavily into it to some degree. And I also think, and maybe this is just my perspective, and maybe this has been a fear of your ties into like your fear or concerns, and maybe it doesn't, but like, you know, you make a generative collection, you have the speculative markets on it. I don't think it would be wrong to say like there's a non-zero percentage of artists who look at that speculative stuff, the generative collections, and they're probably afraid to do it because they don't want to be labeled a scam or you know, called a rug, and their social capital therefore damaged in ways that they, you know, would have to rebuild from. So
Right. Yeah.
I would say one of ones in this instance almost seems like a from a social from like a relationship perspective, a safer method
Yeah.
or a safer art form.
I think that there's a couple ways to answer that kind of. I guess that was more of a statement than a question, but like there's a couple ways to answer it though. Well, um, one is that I don't necessarily think that an artist is going to be labeled as a scammer if they create a generative collection. I think that everyone that I've talked to about this, because I've talked to several people, um, including Zach, right? I've talked to some people about like that fear that I have of being labeled as a scammer if I create a collection, or like, people losing their money, that kind of thing. And one of the conclusions that I've come to is that if you don't raise an unreasonable amount of money, right? Like I think that the rug, that description of rug, or that description of like scam or whatever, that comes into play when someone has made a 10K PFP collection and they've raised $3 million and then they walk away.
Yeah.
Because the expectation is that if you're raising money, then you're going to do something with it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Whereas if you were to, let's say, this is just an example, and I don't know what I'm throwing random numbers out here. They're not legit. But let's say that you were to uh, create a collection and you were to raise $5,000. Is anybody going to call you a rug if you walk away?
Sure. Yeah. There's an order. It's an issue of scale, right?
Right. Um, so, or you make a collection and you release it for free. Probably no one's going to call you a rug if you walk away. There's another aspect of it, which is, are you promising anything? Right. That's the traditional, are you a security question?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why when we released the Uzis, we were tried to stay clear up front that we weren't going to have a roadmap, right? Um, because if you make promises and then don't deliver, then you're going to be called a scammer because you lied, right? Um, Also, there's possibly some legal ramifications there.
My co host Kitsune had to drop for the remainder of the episode, so we took a brief intermission to reset, but Etheria and I continue the conversation afterwards. Hope you enjoy the second half. Right, exactly. Well, and that's the thing is what we wanted for this podcast, like crucially, is there's I don't know to what extent I feel like there's this idea of, oh, people on crypto Twitter, they're like famous, they're celebrities, they're mythical figures, we idolize them, and part of this is just like, let's get to know the human behind the anime PFP, or the the profile picture behind the meme. Like we want to humanize them, and
The man behind the meme.
yeah. So I feel like I had another question about NFTs, but I might have hit them all with because I talked about like the social capital thing, but
Yeah. I had somewhere that I was going with that. I'm trying to remember. I also just took a massive hit of this vape. But, we were kind of talking about like, just regular little artist wants to make. I hate to say little, but just a regular artist, wants to make a generative collection, and like, what the social ramifications are of doing that, and their fear of being a rug and whatnot. And
yeah,
I,
being
I
labeled
think,
a
Yeah, I think there are ways to do it where you know, there's a specific amount of money that you're trying to raise effectively to live off of, and everyone knows that this money is going towards you, and they want to support you as an artist, and you need to put food on the table and survive, right? Um, and they will understand when you say, "This is my generative collection. I have no roadmap. You are minting my art." You look right. I think there's a way to do it in such a way that if anyone calls you a rug or a scam, they are the asshole, right?
Yeah,
But I've personally not gotten to the point where I'm comfortable doing it. It's mostly just kind of personal reasons and possibly some self consciousness and whatnot, uh, imposter syndrome or whatever. Um, but I don't think that we're at a point where like people can't make generative collections or anything like that.
for sure. And I'm curious your take too, because from the way you've explained like your process and getting involved in the scene, you were not did you do like were you doing extensive art before jumping into crypto, or did you purely do it because just because I definitely you've probably seen the blowback that artists, digital artists, however, creatives of any kind that were doing art prior to making NFTs, you know.
Right, have like lost following and like
Exactly,
yeah.
the anti NFT crowd backlash or anti crypto backlash and stuff, and so it's
That is so silly, right? I mean, like oh God, that is so silly. No, I was not personally like I wasn't doing, commissions in normie land before doing them in crypto. Like I said, I kind of started doing them as just being silly and posting them for fun. Um, but um, actually, that's been kind of one of the things that I had to work through. As I have very low self-esteem, as most of you who follow me probably can tell. I have very low self-esteem, and it probably comes through in my tweets. Um, and so at first, like, how do I put this? I would not have ever made that Byzantine General Penguin on an account that my name was associated with. Um, I, before being a crypto artist, deeply did not believe in myself as an artist. Um, and Becoming anonymous, becoming Etheria-chan, afforded me the ability to put it out there, and if people hated it, who cares?
you could
It's
walk
not
away
right,
basically. Yeah.
right. So it afforded me the ability to believe in myself. Um, so when I make a lot of posts like these sometimes, and sometimes I feel like I just look like a hack. People probably think I'm just blowing steam or whatever, but like when I say like I love you guys and I am so glad that I found this industry and I found crypto art. Um like I mean that 100% because I would not have even shared my art, right? Um and so where I was kind of trying to go with that was that you asked if I had been doing art before this. Um no, and I think it shows in my art. If you go back to the beginning, when I was deeply unconfident, um, I hadn't been putting in, the hours and hours and hours, and so some of my early penguins, definitely my early penguins, I think you can tell that I'm unpracticed. Um, and I had fundamentals in my background, but you know, that didn't necessarily come through, and it took me like 6, 8 months however long it's been at this point, to feel confident and comfortable with my art. Um, yeah, and I'm really proud of where I'm at now, and I've got like two original collections that I've done. So there was a point where um, I was making just derivatives, and all of my art was derivatives. And I had someone close to me say something to me about like, you're not building your own brand, you're building someone else's, and it kind of hit me. And now I actually have some of my own collections that I can make, and when I release those, I'm promoting myself. So that's new to me since I hadn't been doing this before.
Yeah, no, that's awesome though. I mean, I think to some degree, I can't remember of course, another podcast episode of somewhere I heard it, but like I heard advice, and I think it could be interpreted hit or miss. It could depend on your medium, but like a good way to start is by doing either derivative type works, and then
Hmm.
pivoting to your own, putting your own original spin on them, and then pivoting to original works. But
Yeah.
like, no shame in using derivatives as a stepping stone to get noticed. I
No.
would say there's no shame in that at all.
No, I mean that's no, I agree. I was very self-conscious about it at a point, but I agree. Like think about why fan art is so popular, right? It's an incredible way to learn as an artist, right? And you can make you can learn as the artist and make money because go to any convention, um, go to any of those things, and you'll see on Artist Alley full of artists that are selling predominantly derivative art of characters from shows or whatever that are related to that convention. Um, so yeah, I don't think there's any shame in creating derivative art.
Yeah,
So
I definitely think there's opportunity even within um doing, I mean, just one of ones, but the industry as a whole. There obviously are still people who are interested in paying for art and invested in the space, and there's still different opportunities to approach making art generally. I'm not to plug myself too bad, but like animating NFTs in my instance, taking generative collections and animating assets is another. I'm mostly just saying this to like encourage potential artists who are uncertain. Like there's still a vast amount of opportunities in the NFT space
yeah,
just
yeah.
to enter.
No, absolutely. There's tons of stuff that hasn't been broached yet. And first, I've got to say, don't feel bad about self-plugging. I love your stuff. I more people need to see it, especially because your art is like art with a capital A with, you're discovering identity, like you're approaching some really deep topics with your art. So, don't feel bad about that. Um,
Yeah, this episode's about you.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It is about me, but it's also about the NFT industry as a whole um, and artists, and so yeah.
Meh.
Um, but you're right. There's tons of stuff that has not been done yet. There's tons of stuff, relative to NFTs that have not been done, you know, in a big way. Maybe they've been done, but not in a like a um, what am I trying to say? Like broad market reach way yet, with NFTs and gaming, right? There's tons of opportunity here. So it's possible, you guys were asking before the break about, um, whether I thought kind of generative collections were drying up. Um, maybe, maybe they are, but there's tons more that can be done with collections of NFTs, um, beyond just being, layered art that gets minted.
For sure. And actually, since you talked about doing game development for a time,
Hmm.
is that something you've talked about your hesitancy regarding a generative collection, but what about approaching it from that angle? Like would that be something, if perhaps if there were, if it seemed viable, because I know there's a good amount of skepticism in the space about GameFi in
Right.
particular. But do you think that's something? Well, I mean, you talked about it's
That I would
possible,
that I
but is
would
that something that
consider.
you would consider if you could, art, but also programmatic art in the sense of being able to do
I
more
can
with it?
interact with it and do
Yeah,
things with it. Yeah. That is something that I would consider. It's something that I've done before. I've worked with before. I think that not as Etheria-chan. But I think that that's one of the areas that I am very interested. Like that's one of the reasons, and I swear to God, I am not trying to shill. I mean, I swear, I'm not trying to chill. That is one of the reasons I'm actually pretty excited about the Wassiverse project, for example, is because um, they've actually got something built, by the way, right? Right? Like they're not releasing art and promising that they're going to build something. They've actually been building a lot
Yeah, they've been
prior to
showcasing like
that.
a working
Yeah.
product. Yeah.
Right. Right. Uh, perhaps early stage product. I don't know, but yeah, they've got like an actual thing that they're launching. Um, And I'm excited about stuff like that, right? Stuff where it's not, here's some NFTs and let's slap DeFi stuff on top of it and hey, look, it's a game. Like, no, that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in are the Hearthstones of the world where you've got a trading card game and now you actually own the cards and you can buy and sell them at the game store. You can walk into a game store and maybe you play a game with somebody there at the table and then they ask you if they can buy some of those cards or something, right? Like, um, and there becomes that actual secondary market. Um, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that secondary markets aren't real right now, but like an actual market beyond just the collection of the item.
Oh, yeah,
This
and beyond just like purely speculative value, like they're
right,
not trying to make profit, literally trading for the purpose of
right,
reusability or yeah.
right, and I'm really excited about on-chain gaming, like games that um games that do not require a centralized entity to host a server for you to play with your friends.
Hmm.
Like a game that what am I trying to say? So like I okay, here's why. Here's why. Sorry, I took a hit a little bit ago and I'm pretty high. But one of my favorite games growing up was Star Wars Galaxies. I loved that game. That dates me. I know the kids these days don't even know what the hell that game is, and good because it was very. You would not have liked it, but I I loved it. The Zoomer generation would not love Star Wars Galaxies, um, but I loved that game, and I won't go into all the reasons why. I'll just go into the fact that they got shut down. Basically, what happened was Sony Online Entertainment owned them. Sony Online Entertainment kind of, I believe, shuttered, and or at the very least, they were like Star Wars Galaxies was not profitable for them at the very least, and so they just kind of slowly sunsetted the game. Um, and that was that was really hard on me. Um, because like that was how I and some of my friends like that was our thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be like the equivalent of today, Fortnite shutting down, and you and your friends have all been hanging out and playing this game, and it's gone. And like you might not seem like a big deal because we could go play other games, but like you have memories, and you know there's nostalgia now for this thing that doesn't exist.
Memories and communities. I mean, I remember even it was only a few. Well, obviously, this will date me a little bit, but Star Wars Battlefront 2,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a huge community push. I think
Uh-huh.
just a couple years ago, they were like, Disney, fucking open source the server code.
Yeah.
We're not going to make a profit. We're not going to do anything with the IP. We just want the server code so we can run our own
Yes.
servers because but to some degree I think like there are games where purely from a business perspective you're looking at it and it's like it's not profitable. They're losing money on it.
Mm-hmm.
It totally makes sense from a business perspective. But I do wish, I mean, it's kind of twofold. One, in the sense of like, I think they did eventually get for Battlefront 2, like the server code and people can
Mm-hmm.
host their own servers. Like, if there's a strong enough community that's passionate about it, you can have something like that.
Yeah. And that
But it
actually
almost makes. Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say that actually did happen with Star Wars Galaxies as well. There is they actually I think it was an unofficial backdoor thing where they got the server code. Um and like nobody technically is sure whether or not it's the real code, but it's the real code. Um but yeah, like yeah, you can get a community to come together and maybe do something like that if somebody like Disney is, you know, I guess benevolent enough to allow it to happen. But you're relying on that, right? Um, Nintendo is incredibly protective of their IP, right? Um, I don't see Nintendo open sourcing a server and letting the community take it. So like there are companies out there that you are trusting, I guess, to just keep this thing open forever. And especially these days with DRM, like back in the day, you could just host a server of Battlefront 2 on I think GameSpy was the name of the
Yeah,
service.
GameSpy or there were a couple, one or two different options that
Yeah,
I remember.
but like you could back in the day. That was a normal thing. It shipped with the product was the ability to run a dedicated server, right? And today, one of my favorite games, Overwatch, you can't run a dedicated server of that. I used to run a LAN community here in town, and we would get together once monthly. And I had to make sure one of the things I had to make sure of was that we had enough bandwidth for all the people who showed up to play Overwatch over the network, because they only have a server in the cloud. You have to matchmake, um, and so like you're trusting that Blizzard won't go solvent, that they won't just decide to stop running these servers because it's not profitable for them. And like so yeah, I'm really excited about this idea of being able to have like all of the game code on chain, on a chain that you trust not to disappear. And so there is that, right? But at the very least, it is a massive community of people who decides whether or not that chain continues to exist, right?
For
Um,
sure.
so yeah, like I'm really the original question you asked was whether or not I'm super excited about gaming and NFTs, and yes, and gaming and blockchain in general, and yes, um, I think there's a ton in GameFi we've not uh, like publicly maybe done yet. There are a lot of people who are pursuing games that like people were expecting these people who raised money this year to like come out with a game in this bull run, and games typically take years to make, especially like multiplayer games and stuff like that. It takes tons of time to balance, and so like here in the next few years I think we'll see a resurgence of GameFi. I don't think GameFi is dead. I think GameFi will have a very different face when it actually becomes popular. um, just like NFTs have a very different face than when they first came popular. Um, but I definitely think the technology is uh, is powerful, and I'm excited about it.
For sure. And especially, think of the possibility of any kind of specifically with on-chain gaming, like any kinds of derivatives or modified gameplay, or people can,
Yeah, imagine
people,
that.
yeah, and
Like,
and people will, I, I don't think conglomerate is the correct term, but like people will eventually coalesce, come together onto the one that like is the most popular and has the most features that everyone likes and types of things. It'll just be like a natural evolution of
yeah,
game iteration, and then people will eventually settle on the one that is the most popular and people like the most.
imagine this for a minute. Are you ready? I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna take you on a journey
Oh
of
boy,
what I'm excited about. Okay.
go
Imagine
for
for a
it.
minute. Imagine for a minute that this industry tends to promote open source software development. Um, right. Most of our contract code and stuff like is available as open source for you to contribute to. Right. Um, in addition to that, it allows people to fork and do things with it. Right. Um, in addition to that, once it's put on chain, smart contract code is special. Smart contracts code is special because it is it is code that is completely visible on chain, and it's also, well, the code is visible. We can get into the conversation of like zk and whether you can actually see all of the bits, but the code is visible on chain. In addition to that, the code is written in such a way that other contracts can interact with that code. Um, and therefore, when you release a game like this into the wild, you can have the players deploying code that interacts with that game. right? Um, so I've not deeply read about this yet, so I don't want to get into details because I will look stupid. But I've recently learned about a game called Dark Forest. Um,
Mm.
it's completely played on chain, and it's got a bunch of ZK involved, basically, so that you can make decisions that the other players can't see, but they're cryptographically verifiable decisions, right?
Sure.
Um, and because it's fully on chain, um, people can write bots to interact with this, right? And contracts to interact with this, and so it's a living game and a living ecosystem. Um, how wild is that? Like, it, to a degree, we can do that today with modern games, right? Like, there are typically, modding tools and stuff for single player games. Not usually modding tools for multiplayer games, but there are some. Um, like there's like Overwatch has the I think they have like this. I don't know what it's called, but it's like a thing where players can submit um, basically mods to play with or whatever.
Oh yeah, like community play modes or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And then like Smash, you've got map making and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think there's something inherently different with being able to like submit your own code to the game, like
Yeah.
augment how the game is played. And it's not a test server, right? It's not like you're not submitting a mod that people can download. You're submitting code that will run for all players, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, even
So
thinking about the possibilities of deploying contracts and you have bots who are monitoring, possibly even playing the game, looking at contracts like that, and think
yeah,
like flash bots with financial transactions. But even further, it's like bots that will quickly analyze a contract's code, try and find a vulnerable weak point, and then
right,
exploit it like in the process of a block transaction. Like
right.
I could definitely see the possibilities.
Imagine GameFi Mev, where you're playing like seriously, you're playing the equivalent of like Go or something, and you can like jump in front of someone else's transaction. That's not a good example. That's a two-player game. But my point is like you're playing.
But front run, like
Yeah,
you know someone's going to make a certain game move, and you can front run that move.
right.
You can literally be 3 steps ahead of your opponent in a game of chess, like because
Yeah.
you know where they're gonna be.
Yeah, I like that's fascinating to me, and I don't think like some people might say, "Oh, that would be broken." I don't think that's broken. I think that that's a way to play the game, and um, like I guess it depends on the type of game because in certain games it would be considered cheating, right? Um, so like it's up to you as the game designer to design a game that's okay to be played that way. Um, but yeah, that fascinates me.
Yeah, it'll be a hybrid too, in the sense of not only would you have to bring like game development knowledge to the table, but you'd have to understand like all the standard mechanics of the blockchain you're using too.
Yeah,
All the different what's the block times, how are blocks processed, such and such like that. So yeah,
yeah.
um, yeah. No, it's just fascinating stuff. It really is.
Yeah, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And anytime I talk to a developer or somebody like that who sees this too, I talk you can talk to a lot of people and you can see on the timeline people talking about the other stuff. The people who, and no offense to anyone who did this, I'm not saying they did a bad thing, but the people who raised money through an NFT collection and now they're making a game. Right? I think that it's really exciting to talk to people who kind of want to do things more along the lines of like I want to make a game and then I want to make NFTs, interact with it. I want to make a game and then, you know, um, whatever. I guess my point is that I get really excited about talking to specific people who kind of have uh, these same ideas. Um, one such recently. Um, one second. Just make sure that I'm not saying the name wrong. Oh yeah, I had a conversation recently with Space Monk. Um, he's founder of the Harmonic Decay game. They I don't recall there was supposed to be, I think, like a private beta soon that they're building for this, or that they're running to get testers for. But he has like the right mindset on this stuff. I think like he's building a game that happens to interact with the blockchain, um, as opposed to um, trying to make something to speculate on, if that makes sense.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, building a game and then trying to incorporate instead of building a crypto thing and then slapping a game on top of it.
Right.
Um, we are at about an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you are okay to if we move to typically what we have is like a lightning round of like kind of simplistic, fun, casual questions. If you're cool with that, maybe we go another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
All right. If I if I knew his voice well enough, I'd try and do like a Kitsune impression. Uh, but so Kitsune's a was a bartender for a time, and so typically he would ask like, "What is your favorite drink?" And while you're welcome to answer that, I instead would like to ask, because I know you smoke weed. Like, do you have any? Do you have like a recommended? This is coming from someone who has no concept whatsoever of like. So, is there a particular like strain or something you would recommend, or or what you
um
use even, or
so okay. What's funny is you know as much as I do about this, because I just started actually last year smoking weed. I used to drink, and I don't anymore because I have gout, so I can't
mm,
really have alcohol. But yeah, so I started smoking weed last year, and I don't even know what I smoke. I don't know the strains. I don't know anything. All I know is I'm fairly confident it's indica, because I've had the sativa strains before, and they fuck me up. Um, and this does not, like, I like sativa really gets me like anxious, nervous, like scared feeling, and this just makes me feel silly and tired,
gotcha,
so
gotcha,
that's what I prefer. I'm not a big, I don't know, whatever that other stuff is supposed to do. I don't love.
gotcha. Um, uh, is there anything you want to are there any people like on Twitter or just CT in general or the industry that like you would want to shill or promote, or anyone you want to like shout out
Well,
at
first
all?
of all, I already promoted you. I just want to be. I'm serious. I think anybody that's not already following you should. I think your art's really cool, and you're a really fun person. Um, I also, Miyuki is like one of my favorite people on the whole planet.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I won't get into details on stuff, but like I love them. And let's see. Hang on.
If you wanted to plug like other artists too, like you mentioned
I
Graphy a while
Yeah.
back.
Give me 1 second. We'll edit this out really, really, really high. Um, yeah, I would definitely plug some of my artist friends. I think that Graffy is incredible. Very, very good person, very good friend. I think that Baffy is an incredible friend. I love him. Um, one of the more recent people that I followed, who I love talking to, is, I'm gonna get her name wrong, Mayra Ray. She does this really cool exposure photography stuff that I love, and it's so different from what I see out there. That kind of like makes me believe in art again. You know what I mean? It feels very creative. I big proponent of bitter. Um, I feel horrible that I'm gonna forget a bunch of people's names, and I'm high, and I'm so sorry. But all of those people are really, really awesome people. Also, one last is Cozy, who just has had my back recently, checked on me when I've needed help. Um, you know, recently checked on me just to see how things are, and I love to see people in the space take care of each other and care about each other. Really appreciate Cozy. Also, not so fast, who has been a big proponent of me from the beginning and has helped me out a lot, and I've worked for him on the Lotus project. Um, he's a really good dude. Got tons of followers, so but I wonder if anybody listening isn't already following him. But really, really, really good dude.
Awesome. Um, and then kind of tied into that, and I'm gonna try and channel my inner Kitsune, like to make sure I word this right. Who's one person in CT who you think is kind of underrated, but like you see the notification, you see the notification from them, and your face just lights up. Like who's someone
Oh my
you
gosh,
really,
Gur,
yeah.
100% Gur, DeFi Gur, GIR. He's one of my favorite people. I feel bad that I didn't mention him 2 seconds ago because I'm so fucking high. But uh, he's an incredible person. Um, Great friend. Met him in New York. And I blows me away. Let's see how many followers he's got now. 800. Um, blows me away that he doesn't have more followers because he's a really smart guy. Um, and a really great friend.
Awesome. Yeah, we're hoping to get him on the pod at some point too. So
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Definitely talk to him. He's such a smart guy.
yeah. Um, is there anything of yours, anything left you want to try and anything you want to try and plug, or anything you want to shill? I mean, this is your personal projects, and
Um,
because if you won't, I will shill some of your stuff because I like a lot of your stuff. Tell you what.
thank you, thank you. The only things I really want to talk about at the moment, I suppose, are I've got those two 1/1 collections that are mine originals, the Geomasks, um, and the Yu-chans that got DMCA'd for a moment there from OpenSea.
Oh yeah.
Um, I am still doing commissions for those. I'm not like actively shilling it at the moment because I'm doing some smart contract development and trying to possibly maybe wear a couple hats in this industry for a little bit. Um, so I am still taking commissions. If people are interested, super interested, hit me up. Um, but just not like not let's say not full time, I guess, if that makes sense.
Sure, sure. But I mean,
I'm very pumped about them though. What's up?
oh, for sure. I mean, I personally think the geomasks, you've really hit something creatively, stylistically unique, and fun and charming in its own way. I
Thank
really
you.
like them.
Thank you. I came upon that one by total accident. I was practicing some like proportions on my faces because it was like there was a period of time where I was drawing my own character over and over and over, and I wanted to make one that like I associated with myself that I felt really proud of, and I kept like getting fumbling on a couple of these really basic proportion things, and so I started like drawing a grid and thinking of the head very geometrically, thinking of it in 3 dimensions, trying to get everything right. And I looked at it and I was like, this looks really neat. Like I love all of these lines, I love defining the head shape, and it's actually one of the parts of the drawing that like really excites me now, is just like kind of laying out those 3 dimensional shapes. Um, and so yeah, I just what I ended up doing was I had that page with all of the sketch lines on it, and I just like I traced a few of them, and then I started erasing some of them to uh like there was just a little too much noise, right? So I started erasing some of them to get them out of the way of like the eyes and the mouth and stuff, and it
Sure.
just kind of like took shape. Um, and no pun intended, I suppose. Um, and so yeah, I'm thank you. I guess let's say thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always fun too whenever piecing stuff together and you just erasing or and you just have like that aha moment, like, you know, going too far or going too far and then pulling back, or like I've had that. I had that with one of my pieces where I distorted stuff completely wildly, and I was like, let's scale it back a little bit,
Yes,
and
but that's
then
that's how you find the best stuff, right? Um, like it's yeah, it's always best to push it a little too far. Like make a crazy expression, right? Have you ever seen in like animation, like 2D animation, have you ever seen when you like freeze frame on Aladdin's face in the middle of like an action scene and it's just completely fucking ridiculously
completely
shaped?
distorted. Yeah,
Yeah, but like you wouldn't get some of those fluid motions if that frame didn't exist. Um, so like, yeah, make it crazy. You know, push it way further than you think you should. And then you'll see the full thing, and you can decide what parts of it you want to pull back.
and it's all just a constant learning experience. You can always
Yeah,
learn something. I whenever I make one, I always learn something new about the whether it's the tool I'm using or stylistically, or it's just
yeah.
uh, it's just wild.
Ah, that's the part we love.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else you want to plug, or anything else you really want to share? Like you're really, you know, is you talked about your commissions and stuff, and you're working on programming. Is there anything else like you're working on, or you're passionate about, or anything you want to share?
Um, yes. Well, there's let's say this. There are things I'm really excited about, but partially because I don't want to sound like an idiot, and partially because I don't want to sound like a shill. I'm afraid to say it on a podcast. Um, but like, yeah, there's some tech stuff that I am like super excited about right now that has me thinking like, okay, we've got a bear market ahead of us that we have to get through, but like for lack of a better term, I'm incredibly bullish on this technology, right? Um, because it's just like I don't see how the decentralized world can exist without it. So yeah, that's all I'll say.
So
There's stuff
probably
I'm
safe
pumped
to say
about.
like people want to, you know, stay informed. Just follow you on Twitter and, you know,
Yeah,
stay tuned,
yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
I'll probably soon be sharing the stuff that I learn about it because it's just super exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it because,
Thank you.
you know, for all the tweets you try and delete. uh, all right.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't stay tuned, you might not even see it.
Ho ho. There you go. Stay tuned and see what happens. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for tuning into this episode of the Dojima Futures Exchange podcast. And if you have the time, you know, like, share, comment, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.